to the CS100 stage, the SVP of Customer Experience from Docebo, Katie Bonilla.
This is my
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Are you having a good time so far? Yeah, great morning. Did you try the hot chocolate? I love hot chocolate. There's a hint of marshmallow in there, so if you haven't had it, definitely recommend. I'm super excited. I think my presentation is a product of expert programming because I'm going to talk about how to do a lot of what Sasha, Dan, and everyone else has already kind of talked about. So I'm getting kind of tactical and talking about how we use at Docebo a task force to really set the stage, create a foundational data layer, and create a significant strategic plan that we could execute on very quickly. So hopefully this will be really beneficial for you. But if you're not familiar with Docebo, it's a learning management software. And we went through hypergrowth, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I think I know the answer to this, but how many of you struggle to get executive engagement or cross-functional support or otherwise get what you need from other teams in supporting retention? Few hands, right? It's a common problem I hear about, and my background is actually not in SaaS, not in customer success. I come from hospitality. I was a bar manager, restaurant manager. I went to college in Miami, and so I started training and developing management teams, opening new restaurants, opening new bars, and I just fell in love with education, and Docebo was a vendor of mine eventually once I got into healthcare. And I love education because I love to help people. And so that's kind of brought me to professional services, which I led at Docebo for about 7 years. And I just stepped into the SVP role last June. And I was like, I don't actually know anything about CSMs, never been one. Got a lot of CSM friends. Didn't really know anything about renewals, sales, forecasting. Like all of that was very foreign to me. But what I quickly realized when I talked to my CEO about taking this role was retention was seen as a CS problem, as a CS responsibility. It wasn't seen as a business problem, and it wasn't seen as a shared responsibility. So I kind of said, if you need me to take this role, part of which the remit was to turn around a retention problem we were having, I said, I need support. Like, I can't do this by myself. Based on what you're telling me, it's clear that other parts of the business haven't been supporting former leaders and teams. And even in leading professional services, I have felt that, and here's what this has looked like for me. So we did a little bit of a handshake there, and I wanted to talk about how I got his buy-in to create a task force, how we use that task force to do a lot of the things that we've already talked about this morning. Get executive engagement, get cross-functional support, get the BI team to help us with the analytics that we needed, create an effective executive sponsor program, and then turn that into a business as usual model, so it wasn't just task force time and task force results, it was long-term strategy and foundation. So just really quickly, Docebo was founded in 2005 in Italy. It was actually called Spaghetti Learning at the beginning. So Docebo's a little better, it means to teach in Latin. We opened our first offices in Athens, Georgia, which is where I live, in 2013, and then we went public in 2019 and 2020, respectively, in Toronto in the US. COVID for us, in conjunction with going public, just catapulted our business. We kind of went from like a lower mid-sized organization servicing a lot of startups and a lot of SMB companies to some of the biggest companies in the world starting to look at us because they needed to enhance their online learning during COVID. And pretty much every business, if they were doing things with ILTs or otherwise on site and didn't have an LMS, they needed one immediately. So we skyrocketed very quickly. 2019, we're about 40 million annual revenue, and by 2024, we were at 230. So quick growth. It was a crazy time. It was the rocket ship I signed up for when I joined in 2018. But what that really meant is that we were building the plane as we flew it. We were very reactive. We weren't super strategic about a lot of things because we were just trying to absorb the amount of business and do that as successfully as possible. In about 2023, we started to see a little bit of a decline, right? The COVID was over and people were starting to go back to normal. And so that gave us the space to ask a lot of the questions that Sasha was talking about, like how do we implement a framework that is intentional, and how do we create that pathway and map out those experiences we're trying to create and define what our approach is, because we've just been trying to handle it. How do we get in front of that and become more proactive? So for 2025 and last year, that's really where our head's been at, is trying to create a successful model for this. So we all know that most customers will leave because of a poor experience, right? And this was one of the things that I talked to my business about and tied that to revenue. I really brought numbers to the business and used that sort of sales language and the numbers of the business to talk to my company about why product was a key player in retention, why finance and our pricing strategy was a key player in retention, why CS was really the front people for all of the things that all of the teams in the business do, and how if we don't have certain things available to us, whether it's resources or information or good strategies from other teams, we can't really do our job. And so I wanted to change the narrative truly of CS owns retention and make sure everybody took a very strong hand in that. So the task force was created in July of last year. And I'm just going to talk kind of tactfully through this and trying to get a little bit more granular of what this looked like and how we did it. I only have 30 minutes, so I will not get through everything, so please, if anyone has questions afterwards, happy to talk through it. But the first thing we did was we put together a cross-functional team. So again, if you're trying to tackle an issue in your business, it's not your issue, it's everybody's issue. So we made sure that we got product to the table. We had our support team. For us, customer experience is considered our services team and customer success and renewals. Ops and BI were critical, so I don't think we could have done anything that we did without their support. And then we obviously had finance. Couple other things that were really important is we had 2 executive sponsors of this task force. One was very important, and that was our chief of staff. We knew that we needed to get the whole C-suite behind us, and so we went to the person whose job it is to help corral them and herd the cats. And then we also had our CTO. So from a tech perspective, we had a lot of data debt. We had a lot of lacking integrations. We knew that the IT lift was going to be very heavy and really a critical part of what we had to move forward. So we actually asked him if he would help sponsor. The next thing we did was create a plan of attack. And so we just talked about how important having a plan was. So I was able to get buy-in from my CEO. He let me bring all these people to the table. I had to sit them down and very quickly say, this is what we're going to do, right? We didn't really have time, and their time was very valuable. I mean, these were C-suite members, executives across the business. And so if I was asking for their time every week, if I was asking them to prioritize this in their day, I needed to tell them what we were doing and how they were going to do it. So we met really quickly and made sure that they understood what our forecast looked like. So we did a bottoms up for the whole next year. We did a risk analysis to showcase what our specific risk areas were. We did start by cleaning up data. I mean, one of the first things we figured out when we did that bottoms up was why don't we know the themes? Some of these themes aren't very clear. And that's where the data team and the RevOps kind of came into play of helping us hone in on some of the categories that we had and just immediately tackled these things. As soon as we found a problem, we fixed the problem. And that's why the task force was super helpful. The next thing we did was look at, for us, we needed to target our highest ARR. That's where we did see, it wasn't a ton of accounts that were leaving, but it was the accounts that left, it hurt the worst. And so we really kind of started by setting our sights on our bigger accounts. So we created a threshold that we looked at. I don't know where it went. There we go, thank you. So we created a threshold, and that was just kind of our starting point of tackling. We looked at those accounts, and we found out the risk themes, and then we immediately defined targeted plays. So I forget who said it, but they said, pick 3 things. That's what we did. We picked the 3 things that we knew were risk themes, and we had very specific plays around that, whether it was aligning services at no cost, getting an executive to the table to be more strategic, looking at pricing and right-sizing, whatever it was. We had very specific targeted, if you hear this thing, if you confirm this risk, this is what you do. And then we expanded our plays around that, so we had multiple teams on the front lines that could engage very quickly. The next thing was really moving super fast. So we set incredibly aggressive targets and timelines for ourselves. And again, that sort of puts the pressure on. In the context of a task force, that just allows you to keep everybody moving. You're asking for concerted time. Using a really, really tight project plan helps you with that. But we talked about another theme of communicating up. Every week we were sending executive updates. Every day we were like, this is what we talked about, this is what we did. We knew how many tasks were finished, what was blocked. So moving at speed and then tracking progress was really critical here, because the second we stalled on something, we got support to unblock it. All right, executive sponsorship seems to be a little bit of a hot topic that kind of came up in the last questions, I think. So the first thing I do think is really important is, again, kind of getting to the right people. So some people report to CEO, CRO, CCO. You need to get whoever you're reporting to on your team. So we report to the CRO, and we translated the need into dollars, just like everyone's already said. Like, if you are struggling to sell and we're not also retaining, we're screwed. Sales are slowing, so here's how we can help you. Here's how retention then drives expansion. We translated that into business metrics that really mattered, and that was revenue language. So we got these folks to the table. We did do what Zendesk kind of mentioned, and we're like, everybody on all the accounts. So first things first was we did ask our executive team. We said, hey, we've got this list of customers that are in this threshold that we're targeting, and here's the risk. Here's what we want you to do. We gave them an email template so they didn't have to think about reaching out, and we actually had someone support them in reaching out and say, hey, this week reach out to this customer, here's what you need to know. We gave them a specific questionnaire. So again, like, get on this call, facilitate the call as you would, and be personal. But by the end of the call, we need answers to these 3 questions. So please get this specific information for us, because in order for us to move quickly, the answers to these questions are how we're going to act and save these customers. AI summaries was critical, so I have a little gift for y'all at the end. But a summary to kind of tee up for the executive, like this is the profile. If they wanted to meet with the CSM, they could before meeting with the customer. But we developed AI profiles really quickly to help summarize what do we already know, so that you have some information to go in and look at the personalities, the account, et cetera. And then tracking in place. We don't have executive assistants yet, so we were like, who's going to help these people do all these calls, send all these emails, follow up? So we did designate a few people, and we put them on a spiff. And so the results of the task force, they were rewarded on that, because this was a Herculean effort to do all this in 6 months. And so these folks just really acted as the EAs and the project managers that made sure all those things were happening. Our executive team were like, this is so easy, and this is so nice. I get to talk to customers, and I'm not stressed about it. I have somebody to remind me. You've given me access to information. This is actually not that bad. So it didn't feel like a lot of effort for them, and they started to see the benefits of talking to more customers, which was awesome. And then the other thing was, in order for us to close the task force, we said a criteria of the task force itself is that we have to come up with a business as usual plan. So we will not disband this group. We will not stop this concerted effort until we do have an outline of what's still in flight. So if anything still needs to be done, what is that list? Who's going to do it, and when is it going to be done by? A lot of that was tech fixes. We had a lot of tech debt that we had to clean up. We also were looking at tooling. I mean, AI, all of this stuff. I mean, I don't know how many POCs and vendors y'all are looking at, but we've got all kinds of tests running. And so what is the plan for continuing to enhance our tooling? What are the long-term strategies, right? So we targeted this group. There's a lot of other customers. There's a lot of other risks. How do we make sure that we scale this? And then ownership and timelines was, again, very, very important. So what happened? 2 things, really. Amazing business results, which I'll talk about in just a second. But some unintended, very cultural business changes happen, and that's, I think, what will be more exciting for you. The first is we were in a bad spot, but in 6 months, we were able to increase retention by 9%. Our target was 4, so we exceeded our target, and every end of month, we actually looked at where we were, and so eventually we started to increase our targets because we were doing so well. We have continued that, so task force sort of disbanded at the end of Q1 this year. We've continued to see iterative 1% to 2% improvements quarter over quarter, so it's working, great. Board loved this, CEO loved this, and the good thing about it was everyone on the task force, every C-suite, everybody that was involved, they got rewarded for this. They got accolades for this. It wasn't just Katie and her team did something good because they own retention. It was everybody getting to celebrate this really monumental shift in how we operated and the results of that. Took a little while, but that did translate into a 1% increase in gross dollar retention rate. We're still seeing that go up. That takes a long time to move. So every end of quarter, I look at that and I'm like, please, please, please. NPS is crazy. It's really interesting to me, the sentiment themes that have changed, the types of feedback our customers are giving us. Overall, we saw an 8% or 8-point increase in our NPS. Our commercial segment specifically really just changed their tune. Part of that was we didn't have a really good digital model for our pooled customers. So we made a lot of really quick digital enhancements that were very impactful. Enterprise, again, and those larger customers that we had targeted, the executive sponsorship program was super successful. They felt like we were starting to ask the right questions and understand them better. And so we saw really big improvements there. Kind of going back to that middle group, they're super important. We're still focused on that. So we saw good improvements, but that's kind of where now the business as usual is kind of helping us hone in on that group. And then 4% adoption increase. So one of the interesting things, one of the first questions I had in my role was, what's our overall adoption? If I look at all of our customers, how are they using this product and this feature and this thing? We didn't have that. So I think you kind of asked that question, how do you get to that information? And for us, that's why the BI team was so critical. I mean, I was like, I can't see stuff. I can't have my CS team action something. We can't have a meaningful conversation with the customer. I can't scale digital touch points if I don't know when those things have to happen. And what does success look like, right? Is it notifications are most important, or branding is really critical at the beginning? What are the things that matter most? We were blind. So the first thing I said to the BI team, I was like, Iron Man, Batman, what do they have? They have these layers with data, and they can click, and they just have information. I want my CSMs to be Iron Man. I want them to have dashboards, visuals, any data point that's relevant to the customer experience. I want that in front of a CSM, and then the next step is that we get predictive analytics on it. So that's what we built in 6 months. It was pretty good. So great business results. I don't think anybody could argue with, wow, that's impactful. I built trust by achieving these with the board, with the CEO, with the C-suite. But what's more interesting is these cultural outcomes. So the first one was the perception and skills shift. We're all kind of talking about the reskilling of everyone, but CSMs. So when I stepped into my role, we had a really bad reputation. The CSMs were shouldering everything. Again, it's their responsibility to do everything. And so they were failing in a lot of ways, or they weren't looking good in all of these different areas because we asked them to wear too many hats. So the perception with the business was they're not doing their job. They're not strategic enough. They don't know the product enough. They're not spending their time doing the right things. They're not spending their time doing anything. Just the narrative was terrible. And what happened was when we got our C-suite in there, and eventually we engaged more leaders within our business, and they started talking to customers were not complaining about their CSM. They were raving about their CSM. They were like, this person's doing all these things for me. And it just became so clear that the problems our customers had was with support, it was with product, it was with communications, it was with things that other parts of the business own. And so very, very quickly, our whole business started talking about CSMs as the superheroes they are. So that was lovely. That is continuing to help us because, again, we sort of built trust within the business, going from a really bad reputation to a very positive one. The second thing was the rapid optimization. So, a task force might not be the vehicle you use to execute on some of these things, but it does help you get it done very fast. When you have these resources at the table and you have that business priority, again, within 6 months, we were able to literally move mountains on things that had been waiting years, in a queue of that's not important yet, that's not important yet, that's not important yet. So we were able to just overhaul our data architecture. We're still working through some stuff. We completely rebuilt our health scores, enhanced a lot of integrations, the visibility piece I talked about, and then kind of creating a map for how do we keep that energy and keep it moving, which was really great. But just how fast we were able to get things done was insane. The scaling part. So this is what I think is important for our business as usual, but because we were able to get results quickly, we implemented a phase 2 and phase 3 of the task force within 6 months when we didn't have any phases to begin with. We were just we're going to fix the number. So the second phase was really bringing that ARR threshold down. So we started to look at our mid-market segment and do the same analysis. And, we didn't target that whole segment. We looked at like the higher end of it. And so what this meant was we took the practices that we implemented for enterprise, which were targeted plays, additional resources, and executive sponsorship primarily, and said, well, we can't have our C-suite talk to every customer, so who's going to talk to them? So we got our VPs and our SVPs on board. So we called it sponsorship instead of executive sponsorship. And we went to the same teams and said, hey, your boss really likes this. Here's what they've told us about it. They want you to help us. We want to make it easy for you. Here's what it looks like. Here's the results we've gotten. And the other thing we did was we translated the results that we got into their business metrics. So when you're talking to the board, you're talking to the CEO, it's all retention, it's those high dollar amounts and money. But when you're talking to other teams, it's how are the current programs that you're running impacting retention? How would being involved help you do your job better, right? So that what's in it for me story and ask is a little bit different at that level. But you can tailor your ask and kind of get that buy-in by saying, I know that you're working on this customer education initiative. I'm giving you 10 customers. Ask them about it. And so that was really lovely. And then we scaled that to commercial as well. So today, we're still working on maturing all this, so it's not perfect by any means. But commercial customers, they have like a frontline, maybe tier 1 of a support manager as their sponsor. Their sponsor has certain points that they can engage, so it's not like every month they have to talk to them. They don't have to be on every QBR. But it's like, this is what you have to do. These are the sort of nice-to-have things, but pretty much every customer has a sponsor to some degree. And then the last thing was the business units. So I kind of mentioned customer education was a good one, who was like, this is so beneficial. Once that VP and her management team got in there and started sponsoring accounts, they were like, this is, like, I now know what education is needed. Like, I'm trying to get this from data and trying to come up with this, and, like, talking to customers is what I needed to do. This is great. Same thing with our marketing team. They're like, this is market research built into my day. I should have been doing this the whole time. So we started to kind of take those things and made sure we share them out and kind of celebrate them. And so a lot of QBR narrative internally has changed completely. Other teams are starting to report their impact on retention. They're using retention and expansion as ways to get support for their programs, right? So the whole way we've talked about everything within Docebo has changed as a result. And it's so much easier now when I go to another team and I say, hey, I have this problem, I have these things I need. I was hoping I could get some support. First, like, what can I do for you? Of course, but they understand already. Like, we're all kind of aligned, and we are now putting in the bow tie model framework, and so that's going to kind of help us get organized to carry this forward. But those were like the main things that we did. All of those are icebergs. Like, within that, I can talk all day about each one of them. But I hope this was helpful in kind of thinking through, like, that executive communication is really, really critical. So the next thing I wanted to give y'all is some treats. So I have two things. You'll get a copy of this afterwards, but the first is an agent. This is the instructions for the agent right here. We built this in Glean. You could build it in ChatGPT or wherever you use agents. But what this does is within seconds, it does right now we're running monthly analysis of our MPS. This is a board level, executive level brief that it spits out that is already in the language of those people. So we asked them to look at it. And it shows us the themes, calls out specific examples so we can see specific logos, specific comments that kind of back up the themes. And then we meet with our full executive team and a couple other core leaders in the business every month to go through it. So again, like, I know one of the problems I had in sending those updates is like, oh, I gotta analyze everything, I gotta put it together in like a really nice message, I gotta tailor it to this audience. This does it for me every time. I don't even need to look at it anymore because we've kind of edited it, so hopefully this is something you might think about using. And then the second one was, this is a questionnaire that we use for our executive sponsors. So these were the questions we asked. They're nothing super crazy. We do use the AI brief to help prep them. Now we have AI note-taking, like in Zoom or Granola or whatever tools you use. So we don't have to say, like, oh, send us your notes. Like, we can get it. We can also get it from Gong. So as long as they ask these questions, we can get the answers. We did build them sponsor dashboards. So a lot of them were like, well, now I'm excited and I want to see, like, am I moving the needle? I want a dashboard of all my accounts with the health score so I can see my impact. They get very excited about that. So they all now have a dashboard. They can come in anytime, look at their accounts, kind of figure out if they want to proactively reach out to anybody. We did training, so process documentation, resource lists, just, again, making it easy if they wanted to get really serious. They've got all kinds of things that they can use. It's very clear. But again, outlining really specifically what their responsibility is was important because it's really easy to feel like I have to talk to this customer weekly, monthly, whatever. It's not true. If you have a good, meaningful executive conversation, they kind of tee up the right contacts for us on the ground, and then we can kind of keep that going and then bring them back in when we need to, so it's not the biggest lift. And then the direct POC for support, kind of ongoing, we do have that support, so there's a single person in the business that oversees this program. So that's it. I was curious if anybody has an example of like a way you were able to do this, like maybe not using a task force, but does anybody have like a success story of engaging a team or executives? I can't see. Interesting. Okay. Well, we got a minute and a half. I don't know if anybody has questions. Oh, there we go. Awesome. We got one example.
No surprise, I shifted I was the VP of Operations there, and I shifted the conversation of the CS team as we spoke to the executive team and the board to revenue numbers, and suddenly we became operational, tactical, to, we actually do have an impact on the bottom line of the organization. I think they knew all along, but we really weren't looking at the retention numbers at all, and the NPS growth numbers and things like that. So that was really impactful in terms of speaking their language.
Yeah, it really matters, and I think the value in success coaching can kind of help you, right? If your teams don't know how to do that, if they don't know how to talk to your customers about that, it's value selling at its core, and so you're value selling up to your business. But learning how to speak that, like talk to your CRO. I think they honestly are the best resource in the business to help you figure out how to translate stuff because they just do it by nature. And it sounds like some people that do report into CRO, like that was a really good resource. We have another one up here. Okay. I think they want just a...
Okay, so can you hear me now? Does that sound okay?
I think you're good.
Okay. You had mentioned that you didn't really have any sort of digital motion for that pooled CS. And so one of the things you did was you actually put some digital motions into place, and that improved some NPS. I'd like to know, just from your more tactically, what are some of those digital motions that you saw really improved?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we did was we named a digital CSM. We didn't have anybody in that role who was overseeing and making sure these things happen. So it was just if marketing was going out, if we decided to send something. So I named a digital CSM and just told him, I was like, what do you want as a customer? He used to be a CSM. I was like, I know you've heard the pain points. Fix them. I'm not even going to tell you what they are. Just you fix the pain points. And so he took a quarter to go across the business and hear and figure out what tools he had available and all this kind of stuff. And what we were able to roll out is campaigns, email campaigns in short. So basically, I think in year one now, customers get sort of 16 different nudges. Things like, hey, welcome to the team. Have you done this education that's available to you? Oh my gosh, you finished onboarding. Congratulations on your launch, right? Just celebrating them. Even notifications and single sign-on were two things that we were like, they don't have this, their adoption will not take off. Those are really, really critical to get set up very early. So hey, do you know how to do notifications? Do you have these things set up? Here's some templates. The three things that were criteria for digital CS is everything had to be value add. So there had to be a resource or information for the customer. There had to be a prompt to action, so we had to tell them something specific that they needed to do, and then they needed a way to get in touch with us if they needed help. I am at time, so I'm going to kind of shut it down so we can move forward. I really appreciate this. This is my first one. Everybody's been so great. And yeah, if you have other questions that I can talk to you about, please let me know after. Thank you.